Welcome to another episode of I Can Do This. I Got This. Anatomy Review. Let's talk about blood flow through the heart. Blood flow to the heart. Well, let's start with the venous return from the systemic circulation. Remember, the overview of the circulatory system is two circuits. One from heart to lungs and back. This is to oxygenate the blood. And then the systemic circuit is to distribute that oxygenated blood to the entire body. So you have pulmonary circuit from heart to lungs and back. And then you have, that is the right side of the heart, that's the pump. And then the left side of the heart takes that blood, the left side pump, and basically is pushing that oxygenated blood throughout the body, and then venous return back to the heart. Now, when we start this, we're going to look at the venous return from systemic circulation. This is deoxygenated blood. Now, it's going to come into the heart via the superior and inferior vena cava, as well as from the coronary vessels, that's the cardiac veins that are on the heart itself, come in the coronary sinus. So there's an opening into the right atrium. So superior and inferior vena cava, along with the coronary sinus, empty into the right atrium of the heart. Now the right atrium, there's an opening to go from right atrium to the right ventricle. This opening is known as the tricuspid valve. So think of it like this. Take your right finger and draw a capital R, 1, 2, 3, or tri for tricuspid valve. The tricuspid valve is the right atrioventricular valve. This is what prevents the backflow of blood from ventricle back up into the atrium when the heart goes into the big squeeze, which is called ventricular systole or ventricular contraction. So basically, the AV valves or atrioventricular valves are preventing that backflow. They're like little parachutes that are literally snapping shut or closing. Now, the cusps are kind of like canopies of a parachute. The chordae tendineae are holding on to the cords that hold on the cusp. And then there's the papillary muscle that literally is giving tension to those cords. Kind of like old man Pap holding on his parachute cords. So now we're going from the right atrium down into the left ventricle. Now, let me park. Here we go. Now, this right ventricle, so we're on the right side of the heart. As it contracts, it's going to be literally snapping shut the AV valves. That's where your first heart sound actually comes from, S1 or lub. And that blood is then going to be ejected up and out through the pulmonary semilunar valve. That pulmonary semilunar valve will push right into this very large vessel called the pulmonary trunk. Now, this whole region of where that right ventricle opens up into that and through the pulmonary semilunar valve into the pulmonary trunk, that part of the heart that opens up a little bit, that's called the conus arteriosus. Now, as we're up into the pulmonary trunk, it's going to bifurcate into a left and a right pulmonary arteries, because remember, arteries away from heart. This is unoxygenated blood or deoxygenated blood. It goes into the lungs where we have gas exchange. Now we upload or infuse that oxygen into our blood and get rid of the carbon dioxide. So now we are basically what we call oxygenated blood. In diagrams, the blood that is deoxygenated, usually you see the vessels and structures are listed as blue, and the oxygenated blood or structures are more described in a color. It's red for oxygenated blood. So now we're in that lungs, both left and right lungs, and now we have to come back to the heart. So this is the pulmonary capillaries, where we have those gas exchange at the alveoli in the lungs. So now we're coming, remember, veins back to the heart. So pulmonary veins are coming back to the heart in what we call basically our left and right pulmonary veins. They empty into the left atrium. Now the left atrium is going to flow through another valve called the atrioventricular valve on the left side. Because it is a left, 2 strokes for an L, that means 2 or bi. So this is bicuspid valve. It has another name, mitral valve, because it's referred to as looking like a mitre, mitral, the adjective. A mitre is basically, kind of like the Roman Catholic, they have those bishops that have that little hat, 2-flapped hat. A bishop's hat is a mitre. That's where they come up with the name. So bicuspid valve or mitral valve. Now we're in the left ventricle. Blood is then going to be ejected when the heart contracts. And understand, interventricular septum with the right and left ventricle, they contract simultaneously together. Even though we're talking about it separate, this is happening simultaneously. Both pulmonary circuit and systemic circuit are pumping simultaneously. So here, left ventricle pushes up and out through aortic semilunar valve. Semilunar valve happens to push up into the ascending aorta. And just real quick note, semilunar valves, when the heart goes into what's known as ventricular diastole, or it relaxes, the ventricles relax. Well, the blood that's in those arteries going away try to flow back into the heart. So we have these semilunar valves that literally, real snappy, snap shut. That's the second heart sound, S2. So this is the aortic semilunar valve because it pushes through the ascending, up into the ascending aorta. Well, from the ascending aorta, we have 2, and this is the first systemic circuit. We have our left and right coronary arteries. It goes up into the large artery, starts to curve around, and this is known as the aortic arch, with 3 branches. The first one being brachiocephalic trunk. The second is our left common carotid artery, and the third is our left subclavian. That brachiocephalic trunk has 2 branches. They're on the right side, so it's like this. On that right side, you have your right common carotid artery, and then our right subclavian. So basically, this is a general synopsis of the blood flow through the heart, with a little bit of understanding of, when you see these color changes of red and blue, understand that is only dealing with the oxygenation or deoxygenation of the blood. Arteries are always going to be basically going away from the heart, and veins are bringing blood. That's why I use this V back to the heart for veins. And where we have those capillary beds, those are regions for gas exchange. Anyway, this concludes our little quick review of blood flow through the heart. This little podcast is brought to you by SheerImpact.com.